start? Okay. Hello, everybody. So I will be talking today about something that is relatively new. I think that it was released maybe a month ago, GA. It's called Jenkins X, and it works exclusively and only on Kubernetes. If you don't care about Kubernetes, if you will not use Kubernetes ever, better go out. This is not for you, just to make it clear. Okay, so quick introduction. This is how I look like. Same thing, same guy. I work for CloudBees. We are a company behind Jenkins, open source enterprise, so on and so forth. So one of my main areas of interest are obviously continuous delivery, continuous deployment, and things that go with it. I'm freak about containers, so I'm very much involved with Docker, Kubernetes, and everything between those things. There is a blog, there are some courses, YouTube videos, books, buy them now. There you go. And that's my Twitter. So before I start talking about Jenkins X and how we got here and so on and so forth, I will actually jump forward immediately, and because most of the session today will be hands-on. So before I start explaining what I'm going to do and so on and so forth, I'm going to go ahead and create a cluster. I wanted to make sure that actually I do everything from scratch, so that you see, so that there are no tricks involved. For doing something from scratch, I need to create a cluster. So I'm going to go ahead and do that first, simply because it takes like 3 to 4 minutes to create a full-blown cluster, and I don't want you to look at empty screen during that time. So I start by creating cluster, then we're going to go back and I'm going to explain why we are doing what we are doing and so on and so forth. So I'm going to create a cluster, and everything I'll be doing today is going to use Jenkins X. You see there by the command JX. So first thing I'm going to do is to create a cluster. I'm going to let Google know that that's okay to do. I'm going to select my project, this one, for example. Where should I run it? Let's say US East B. Why not? These are the sizes of my nodes. I'm going to use 1 CPU, 2 gigs of memory. No, 2 CPUs actually. I'm going to create a cluster with minimum of 3 nodes and a maximum of 5. In other words, I'm going to enable auto-scaling. And now it's creating cluster. And now I have 5 minutes to explain to you guys everything I want to explain about Jenkins X. And then I'm going to walk you through, as I said before, it will be mostly hands-on. I'm going to walk you through commands. We're going to do some continuous delivery and things like that. So, but before I jump into Jenkins X, I want to kind of, because this is Jenkins X, I think, is a new season in Jenkins soap opera. So I want to recap quickly history that led us here. And history starts with a guy called Koske. He worked in Sun at the time, and he was one of those programmers that is lazy. He didn't like doing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again the same thing. Building his projects, running tests, and so on and so forth. So early 2000s, I think, he created a project that was called at the time Hudson. And that was in Sun, and overnight it became so popular that almost all teams in a large number of teams in Sun adopted it and then adopted Hudson as their default tool for what today we call continuous integration. At that time, that wasn't a thing yet. And a relatively big open source community was formed around that project. Contributions started kicking in. It was open source from day one, and it was really good at that time. And now what happened is that around 2009, Oracle bought Sun. And that meant death to everything good and decent that was done in that company. If you're from Oracle here, sorry, close your ears. That's okay. So Oracle purchased Sun, and with Sun, among other things, they purchased Java and what's or not, and came also Hudson. Now Oracle, as it goes, they don't understand what means of being open source, and they try to do what they do best. And doing best means destroying everything good and decent in this world. I'm exaggerating, but they're not very keen to have open source projects without bringing huge business to it. So they started putting, those administrative tasks, open Jira tickets or whatever they use there for every single change, trying to monetize an open source project, make it less open source, closed source, and what's not, and so on and so forth. And what happens then is that Koske wasn't very happy about it. Community was very unhappy about it. And in 2011, Hudson was forked by the same people who actually created it in the first place and maintained it in the first place. And then from 2011, we have something called Jenkins. It's a fork of Hudson. And which strategy was better, Oracle or fork? It's pretty clear now, because any of you using Hudson? No? Who likes Oracle? If you like Oracle, you must be using Hudson. No? Nobody? Okay. Excellent. So nobody uses Hudson. That's dead. We have Jenkins, open source project, huge community, huge number of contributions. Everybody can build plugins. I think that today we have like 1,500 plugins. Maybe we're even closing to 2,000 plugins. Nobody knows how many plugins we have, but we have a lot. And it's really huge. You can do anything you want, basically. And what happened more recently is that we basically killed freestyle projects. You're using freestyle. You know what freestyle projects are? Okay, excellent. You're still using it? Shame on you. Shame on you. And it's very simple reason, because not Jenkins, but everybody realized that for engineering job, UIs do not work. Click, 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 click until you cannot click anymore, and then you click save. Is not a good way to do any engineering type of work, and pipelines are engineering. So we came up with something called Jenkins pipelines, which are programmatic way to create pipelines. I mean, it always ends up being some form of code or the other, but this time we are writing code instead of Jenkins writing code that nobody understands, and ends up being an ugly XML behind, which most of you probably never saw. But it was really terrible. It was good at the time, but terrible using freestyle projects. And then we came up with pipelines. That was great. Another great thing that was happening with Jenkins relatively recently, maybe a year and a half ago, is that finally it's not about ugly anymore. Whomever of you is using Jenkins must have seen that how ugly it is. It's true. I'm sorry about that. But not anymore that much. This is how new Jenkins, like year and a half, year old Jenkins looks like today. And if you remember Jenkins from before, it was really not that pleasing to the eye. Now, we could have a long discussion whether you should ever see UI. I think you shouldn't. If you like watching pretty colors, there is Netflix, HBO, Prime, Amazon Prime. They're all cheap alternatives. But anyways, also what happened in the meantime is that immutable way of doing things, it becomes a norm, right? Who's using containers here? Excellent. Hey, brilliant. Last year when I asked the same question, almost nobody raised their hands. So containers are becoming a thing, immutable things are becoming a thing, and they're becoming widely adopted, and we need to adapt to that. And also what happened is that we are all moving to microservices. Those of us who can. When I say those of us who can, if you work in a bank, you have a core system written in COBOL, you're not moving. Most of us do. And those microservices enable a lot of features, a lot of possibilities and options that we didn't have before. And at the end of the day, Kubernetes became de facto standard for almost everything related to infrastructure deployment and so on and so forth. It's here to stay. Every single software vendor today adopted Kubernetes. Everybody is going to give you next generation of their software of Kubernetes. It's not a question of choice anymore. We are all adopting it, no matter what you think about it, no matter whether you like it or no. So we added Kubernetes support. There was a Kubernetes plugin that creates pods instead of using static agents. We call it one-shot agents. So whatever you need to do in Jenkins, no matter which tool you need, a pod will be created, it will do the work, and it will get destroyed immediately afterwards. But that was not enough. So redefining, using pipelines to redefine how we define pipelines was a great addition. Changing UI was great. What is next step, I think, is to redefine the process itself. Because until now, most of us were using Jenkins or any other tool to do whatever we want, thinking that actually we know what we're doing, and in most cases we don't. What Jenkins X is doing, is trying to do, is to redefine the process, meaning that this is the process. We thought long about it. We involved a lot of people in it. We explored and observed how successful companies are doing stuff. This is how continuous deployment, continuous delivery, whatever you want to call it, pipeline is going to look like. So that's my elevator pitch. That was a short version of the talk. I don't like talking much. I mean, I do. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to instead show you the code. You can see this, right? It's not too small. Okay, so I just, before I started talking, I just said, I just executed a command in Jenkins X, which is a binary that comes with it, saying I want to create a cluster. And I specified here, you can see it here, that I want it to be GKE, Google Container Engine. It can be AWS, it can be on-prem, it can be almost anything you can imagine. So you can get a cluster out of the box, or if you already have your own cluster, Kubernetes cluster, you don't have to create it. You can just install Jenkins X on top of it. So either of the two options are great. Now, during the installation, this is where I stopped. It asked me a couple of questions. Do you want ingress? For those of you who know what ingress is, you will almost certainly always say yes, because we cannot make our applications accessible in Kubernetes without ingress. Ingress is kind of a proxy. So every single Kubernetes cluster has it, except OpenShift. They call it routes, just to make it different. So I'm going to wait now for a second until this is installed, and I hope that my actually network works. I think that we are on some free Wi-Fi that sometimes works. Let me see. Yeah, it does. Okay, cool. Okay, so I'm creating now the load balancer. This will take maybe a minute or two more, and then we'll be up and running, and I will show you Jenkins X in action. And I think it's really awesome. I hope you will think that too. You can ask questions. If you have any questions, you have like 15 seconds more for questions. Be fast. No? Okay, too late. The domain I want to use, I'm going to use Nipayo, which will give me a domain from them based on my IP. Do I want to use my own username in GitHub? Can you see this bottom? You can. Can I use my own username in GitHub? Yes, I want to use my GitHub account. That's okay. Do you want to create local repositories? Yes, I do. I mean, the good thing about this is that you just answer enter with on every question. There's sensible defaults. We can skip those inputs as well through arguments. So right now, what is happening is that Jenkins X platform is being installed in my cluster. All the resources, services, deploy, stateful set, which will create pods, ingress, and so on and so forth, are being done. And you can see now here that actually those are all the Kubernetes resources installed for me out of the box, right? There are quite a few secrets that contain my passwords and what's not. There are some config maps that define all the configurations for all the tools that we're going to have, service accounts, roles, role bindings, services, persistent volume claims, and so on and so forth. And now what is happening is that Kubernetes, in this case in GKE, is downloading all the images, for those pods here. And once those images are downloaded, we will have up and running everything. So it's not only Jenkins, it's a full-blown solution for everything you need to develop your applications. And I think that's one of the major takeaways I want you to have. It's not anymore about a part of your process. It's literally, and you will see soon, it's everything. From creating your project, before even writing the first line of code, all the way until it is in production. And then a continuous loop of those things happening all the time. So it has, what do we have? Docker registry where we will store images, Hipster that will give us metrics, MongoDB for monocular API, monocular which happens to be a place where we store charts. If you're not familiar, charts are a way to define Kubernetes applications, kind of YAML with templating. Nexus, you're all Java here, you know what Nexus is, and so on and so forth. So again, this will take, you have, again, be fast, 20 seconds, questions. No? Okay, then wait in silence. It's okay. I'm going to check my network connection just in case this is not freaking out. Can I open BBC? Yes, I can. Excellent. It's going to happen soon, probably. I have a video of the same thing. If everything fails, demos fail all the time. And I can actually double check myself. How is it going? kubectl, get ns, get namespaces. Okay. -njx, get pods. Yeah, so they're all they're all actually now running, and Jenkins says, yeah, we are done. Okay, so we have all the applications. So far we have cluster created. In this case, in Google, we have all the applications up and running. And the next thing is that it's going to create something called environment, in this case unicorn range staging. What matters, it's a random name, is that it will create a GitHub repository that will be used for all the staging environments that will be deployed to, actually for all deployments of applications to staging environments, right? So you have staging environment, and everything will be deployed there out of the box. You will see soon how. The only thing that it asks me, what is your GitHub user? I have a couple of them, so I need to choose one. I'm going to choose my own user. And right now it is creating a repository in GitHub for staging. And that repository is created. Server error, I knew it's going to happen. Failed to create server. Okay, Wi-Fi is brilliant. Let's try again. Okay, change of strategy. I'm going to show you a video and ignore. I did it this morning, so it's all okay. Let's just jump to where I was. Okay, so here it was. Here it is. It's creating environment now that where it will deploy all the staging thingies. And it will be done very soon. This is where I was. Creating chart. Okay, wait. Let me find where it was. Here. This is now creating a production environment where it will deploy all the production releases of the application. And finally, it finished, almost finished with installing Jenkins. And it provided me with an initial password for administrative user in Jenkins. So now, if I would be doing this live, I would actually ask you which programming language you like, and I would have a wild guess that you would say Java, and then I would say no. I'm going to know you even more. We're going to create our first application in Go, just so that you get a bit more annoyed than you are. So I create an application saying JX create quick start. You see it here at the bottom. And I'm going to select a language for application. It can be Go, it can be Java, it can be Groovy, it can be quite a few languages. And even if your language of choice is not included in that list, you can either submit a pull request and include your language, whatever that language is, or you can create your own templates for quick starts that will create a repository for your new project based on your favorite language and having there what's or not. So, yes, I do want to use my user. This is a video, this cannot fail. And here you see different applications, application types, and frameworks you can choose from. As I said before, I'm going to now next choose Go as example, and that will create everything that I need for my application. And there you go. I got my files, initial set of files. It created a repository with everything it needs, and it is about to push it to GitHub, to my GitHub account, and it's going to create a repository called, in this case, Golang HTTP. It can be anything you want. So now my application, my repository, my application, initial one is already there. It is a very simple one that says hello world or something like that. And you can see here that it created, among other things, it created quite a few, no, not quite a few, but a few files, all the scaffold that you need for your application to execute there. And it created a Jenkins file that has already whole process baked in, which you can, of course, customize. But out of the box, this is the process that we think should be working for you fine. Actually, that is a well-defined continuous delivery process. And then let's see what else do we have. We have charts coming out of the box. In this case, you have in Golang HTTP/chart/Golang HTTP are all the Kubernetes resources, templates that you need for deploying your application. Whatever you need, service, ingress controller, ingress resource, deployment, stateful set, whatever your application needs, it's all there out of the box. Now, when I say out of the box, it is very opinionated, but you can customize it, of course. Also, what it did, again, everything part of the process, it went, when it created my repository Golang HTTP, it already created a webhook in that repository that will send HTTP request to Jenkins whenever I do commit. So every commit through this webhook will initiate that job with Jenkins automatically, of course. So let's see what else. If you go to my GitHub account, actually not to my GitHub account, to Jenkins X GitHub account, you see all the different startup kits that you can use for your language, whatever that language is, that will create different templates depending on what you need. And if that's not good enough for you, and if you're afraid making pull requests to add your own, you can just add another directory here and saying, my application, I like Perl because I'm weird, and I'm going to add Perl there. That will be a quick start project for that. Okay. I apologize in advance that I'm not doing this live. I hate when people do this to video, but it just failed. So let's look at the pods that we have inside of the cluster. And you see that I'm going to pause this for a second. If you look at the first one over there, that's a pod that was created by the first build of Jenkins, because the moment we created a repository in GitHub, and that webhook fired to Jenkins and said, okay, build my application, run my tests, do whatever you need to do with my application. And as a result, since this is Go-based application, Jenkins created a pod called Go-something that has Go compiler and whatever it needs to have, and also that has a second container that connects back to Jenkins to establish communication. And right now, even though I did not say anything, even if I didn't do anything, the build is in progress and it is about to complete soon. And you see also there Maven, which is required for some internal processes of that build job. And it's still creating, downloading. First time it always takes a few seconds. So I'm going to take the password from a secret. I executed JX console. So that is a command that will open Jenkins in your browser. I'm copying the password here, and if I type it, login, you will see blue ocean, new UI, and you will see that 3 jobs were created initially, right? The first 2 jobs are production and staging. Whenever I decide to put something in staging environment, or that something is put there automatically, or whenever I decide to promote to production, one of those two jobs will execute, and it will do whatever it needs to do to move my application and any other application I need to have in production or in staging. And finally, the third job that we got, so those two jobs, the first two jobs will hold information about all the applications in our cluster. And that can be extended. If that's not enough, you can have, I don't know, performance testing environment or whatever you want. You can easily extend that. And the third one is Golang HTTP job, which is basically the job for my application that I created a few moments earlier. And if you look at the staging, you see that actually staging already finished. It did its job. And now the Golang HTTP job is running. And it is doing all the testing, validations, and what's not of the application that I created, the sample application. And right now it is building a release. And soon it will proceed through the rest of the stages until it is automatically deployed to the staging environment. And you see now that stages promote to environments. This is the part where it is actually going to put it to the staging environment and promote it there. It's going to be finished in no time. So basically what we want to do with this is two things. First, to make it relatively opinionated. This is the process that we know that works. Second thing is to make it really, I cannot say transparent, but very easy for anybody to adopt. If you trust the process and you're willing to adapt to that process, you can accomplish everything with a single command or maybe two commands, and everything that needs to be happening related to application is happening behind the scenes, something in doing whatever it needs to do. Now, when I say behind the scenes, you can, of course, evaluate. Everything is source code. Everything is in GitHub. Whatever, if you're really interested, what are the exact steps, you can go to source code of your own application and see what's going on. Now, let me fast forward this. No. Okay. So, what I did next is you see here, there, somewhere in the middle, JX get activities. Because I showed you UI, because I guess that some of you like UIs, but one of the ideas is that even though you can look at Jenkins UI, absolutely everything can be accomplished through CLI commands. So you don't ever need to go to UI if you don't want to. So for example, what I said, JX get activities. Tell me what are the activities, what is happening right now inside of my cluster. And what it told me, okay, production environment, everything succeeded. The staging environment right now, something is running. It is updating staging environment. And since that update of the staging environment, deployment of the application was initiated by Golang HTTP application, that application is also still pipeline of that application is running, and you can see here that it is promoting the application to the staging environment. And if I now look at the pods, you can see that the Go pod that was before starting is now it's fully running, and it's doing all those things. And if I look at the activities one more time, but this time I'm going to limit the output of those activities. I want to see only what is happening with my application. Don't give me environments and all those things. I want to be very specific, and I want to watch for changes. So now I see that, okay, this is succeeded, this was not executed, this was succeeded, pending promotion to environments, it is running staging, and while I'm speaking, it is proceeding, and now it finished the promotion and cleaned up everything, so no trace of the process is available anywhere inside of the cluster. Everything was destroyed because many of those things are temporary, not needed on longer run. Cool. I said go. Yeah, okay. And if I go back to Jenkins, you had a glimpse that everything is green, everything finished, executing, and so on and so forth. Now, if I want to see the logs of the build, again, there is another command, jx get build logs. I choose for which application do I want to see the logs, and I can choose one of them. Let's say for the master, for the application itself, and those are my Jenkins logs, logs of the process that was executed for me. Or if I want to see logs of a specific application without being asked for the name, I can do that as well with a single argument. And also I can be very specific and say I want to see the logs of my user for that application, that specific branch, if that's what I want to do. So let's look at the pipelines. JX get pipelines gives you the list of all the pipelines that were at the moment configured in Jenkins. As I said before, there isn't much simply because I have only one application at the moment. So there is that pipeline for put into production, pipeline for this is interesting because what the Jenkins X does, among other things, it uses Git for almost everything. So it assumes that every change that we want to do is a commit, is a pull request. No matter whether we create that as humans pull request or Jenkins does it itself. So when Jenkins X finished with this, when it reached the part of the pipeline of the application, Golang HTTP, as a way to promote it to staging, it did not just push something to staging. It went to the staging Git repository, created a pull request, and that pull request triggered the second job that did all the staging that it needs to deploy installation to staging environment. So everything is always a pull request, so that you can either approve it yourself, click the button, yes, I approve this pull request, and then Jenkins continues doing stuff, or approval is automated depending on the type of environment or what you do or don't want to accomplish. Let's take a look. JX get up will give you all the applications that we have deployed at the moment in a cluster. And you can see that at the moment I have Golang HTTP application release 001. And this is the address through which this application is accessible right now. So for example, if for some reason you don't trust your automated tests enough and what's or not, and you want to include manual testers, I don't know why you would do that, but you might. And then this is the address generated for you, and you can open this address, and you will see your application, whatever that application does, and you can do some manual testing or visually inspect whether it looks good, or whatever else you do manually. And I'm going to, what am I going to do next? It's hard to say what I'm going to do next if I'm not doing anything. If I list the applications, I can, instead of listing all the applications, I can list all the applications in a certain staging. And in this case, I said, okay, give me applications in a staging environment. And if I go to my GitHub account now, you'll see that the same release, and I told you that everything goes through Git one way or another. The release that was just created and deployed to my application is also a release in GitHub, and that V001 was created as a result of that automated pipeline. Okay, we're closing to done. What else can we do with the UI? Sorry, not UI, CLI. We can list all the environments that we have and potentially create as many new environments as we want. At the moment, I have staging environment, production environment. I just kept it simple for this demo. And if you're interested to see what's happening in one of the environments, you might want to change permanently your kubectl to that namespace. Everything ends up being namespace. And you can look at the objects in the staging environments, and you will see that there is a deployment. Deployment created a replica set created a pod, and there is a service that makes all that accessible. And if I look at the JXNS, if I look at the namespaces, you will see that there is JX staging, JS production. This is all now in Kubernetes. Those are different namespaces that are distinguished in different environments. And if I look at the production, there are, I now switched to production namespace. And if I look at the pods and what's going on there, there is nothing because I did not yet promote my application. I did not yet give go ahead to production. So I'm going back to the staging environment, and I'm going to promote my application. Now, this is the last step. This can be fully automated, but if you want manually to promote, you can say JX promote. I want to promote Golang HTTP application with the version 001, and I want to move that application from staging, where it is now, to production. And I want to have a timeout just in case. I don't know why I put 24 hours. It should be a couple of minutes. If things go wrong, that it rolls back. And as you see here, everything is a commit. Everything is a pull request. Since I said I want to promote to production, it will record that in Git as another pull request to the repository for production environment in Git. It asked me for my user. I said, yeah, that's my user. And right now, it is using pipeline to build and execute all the steps it needs to execute to move my application to production. And it will be done relatively soon. Okay, I'm going to fast forward. Actually, let me actually go back just for a second. If you see here, it told me that it created a pull request, and this is the address of the pull request. It's the first pull request. And if I go there, I can see this is my pull request, and you can see that some checks haven't completed yet. That's because Jenkins is still working to validate that pull request, and once it's validated, it will accept automatically pull request or manually, depending on what you choose, and then it will be deployed to production. Come on, it's too slow. And that was too fast now. Okay. And once it finished with validating pull request, and it merged pull request. You can see here pull request is merged, and I can click on that link, go to my GitHub and confirm really because I don't trust it yet. And you can see that now pull request successfully merged and closed in the repository dedicated to my production environment. And you can see here that this is the changes between before and after the pull request. And what is important here is that it defined Helm chart in a Helm chart. It defined that now there should be version 2.3.58 of the Golang application. This is the repository where it is stored at Helm chart, and version is 01. And once that change was accepted, it went back to Jenkins, and it will now deploy, or it already deployed that chart, and my production is up and running. And apart from clicking fast forward on my video, I actually hardly did anything myself in all that process. And what we hope to accomplish with this is that actually it will free people from dedicating time to what brings value, and what brings value mostly is to develop new features that will bring you millions of dollars on the market and also not. And that's about it. And this is the address of my application. And it's a very silly application, but you see, this is now the response from my production release. It says hello from blah, blah, blah. And that was my very quick introduction that was supposed to be live, but it's not live, of Jenkins X. And you have, do I have anything else prepared? Probably not. And here, Yeah, nothing else. This is my Twitter. This is my blog. Some stuff, buy my books. And you have 10 minutes for questions. Yeah, so some of those quick starts are predefined. I'm not sure about SonarQube, I will need to check. But if it's not, think of them as examples, not necessarily what you will use 100%. You take any quick start that is close to what you want to do and you change it to do exactly what you want to do. Yeah. So process is not that flexible, but what are the steps of your process that's relatively straightforward and easy to customize. Any other question? Don't be shy. Okay, I don't know. I think she's passing with the mic, so
okay, hello.
I'm going to respect the lady.
Since you're behind all this, can you give us some insights of what's going to come next? Like, what's the next step? Can you, like, predict it or something? Like,
I think that Elon Musk is going to get to the Mars. I think that's the next big thing.
In the scope of your job, of this Jenkins X, what's next?
I think that now the next is to consolidate that and kind of iron the potential problems. It's a relatively new project and consolidate it first, and then we're gonna speak about. There are some things in a roadmap, but I think that they are too green now for me to comment it. And then you say Viktor said this. At the moment, it's mostly consolidation of everything that you've seen.
Hello. Thank you. Good stuff. Have you heard of Adobe cartridges?
Of what?
Adobe cartridges.
No.
I'm not surprised. So something very similar we've been making for a few years now. And the biggest challenges we faced were once everything is up and running and new changes come to something like Jenkins X. How do you merge them in that stuff which is up and running? There's client changing a pipeline. On the other side, there's you making new updates to this great Jenkins X. And how, when you merge that together?
You mean different? I don't understand. What do you mean by merge? I mean, every pull
I'll
request.
ask in different way. What happens when you make a new version of Jenkins X for your end customer?
A new version of Jenkins X, not of your applications.
Also, what happens with your applications which are up and running? Also,
new version of Jenkins X will be JX upgrade or update. I'm not sure, one of those two commands, and it will transparently upgrade everything. So it's a single command, if that's the question. Now, we're trying always to make it backwards compatible. And I'm not now talking about Jenkins X, but in general about Jenkins. So it shouldn't have breaking changes. Now, if you wait for 3 years to upgrade, then nobody can help you, right?
Yeah, but what if I have customized those, how you call them?
Okay.
Those pipelines, basically.
So what is in your, so all process is, the definition of all the steps of the process is in your code repository. Helm charts, Jenkins file, Docker file, what's or not, right? They stay the same. They will never be changed by upgrade. So Jenkins, at least as far as I know, will not try to modify definition of your process in your source code repository. You will, if you want to change what is happening, let's say that your application now goes to staging and production, you want to change to go to staging, or we want to enforce that you go to also performance testing. That will not be happening by upgrading the Jenkins. You will need to change, or either it will be applied for something will be applied for new projects, and other things you will need to change your source code because we are not trying to touch it anymore. Source code of your application, of the staging and production environment, that yes, because that's automatically happening over there. And if you go to source code of the project, you would see that there is a make file also that actually defines most of the things.
Is it production ready?
That depends how you define production ready. If you define production ready by definition of big enterprises like banks, then it needs to be in production by somebody else for 10 years, and then it's production ready. That's kind of enterprise definition of production ready. If you want that definition, then production ready now is probably, I don't know, Windows 2002, and then, I don't know. But it's, so not many big companies today are using Jenkins X in production, right? It's a new project. We think it's fairly stable. We wouldn't put it to make it GA. Of course, there will be issues to Iron because it became GA a few months ago. Try it out.
Thank you.
More questions?
Is it a cultural thing that you don't ask questions, or it was so awful that there is nothing else to speak about?
Yes. Is it possible to continue like cluster creation from the same step like GitHub failed? Is it possible to continue from the same step?
To re-execute the same build?
Yes.
Yes. You asked the question that has a yes or no answer. I gave you yes. Anybody else? Don't be shy.
How well does it work with existing repositories?
Existing repository, like existing GitHub repositories, right? So you would need to create the files that it needs. So, and it uses more or less standard stuff, right? You need Helm chart that defines your Kubernetes application or resources for Kubernetes. You need Jenkins file, and you need a make file and Docker file, which are more or less all standard stuff. So you would import your application in. You would say JX import or something like that command. But before that, you would probably take a sample application just to see those files and adapt them and put them into your repository first. And usually, if it's existing application, then it's a bit trickier because, new application you can say, I'm going to develop this new application exactly as you predicted that the pipeline should look like, right? If it's existing application, then you probably already have some processes that cannot be avoided and processes that should be avoided, but you're not going to avoid them and so on and so forth. But as long as you know how to define yourself, Helm charts and Docker file and Jenkins file, you're golden. There's not much more to do. And by the way, if you use Kubernetes, those things are something that you would do anyway. Anybody else? This is very hard.
So, one thing that I was in the workshop on OpenShift 2 days ago.
Okay.
And OpenShift and both Kubernetes and Jenkins X are quite new to me, so I'm trying to piece the whole puzzle together. Anyway, as far as I could tell, OpenShift has a system where you create a building pod which knows how to build your app. Even for instance, I have a really old legacy app and I simply know all the scripts it needs to execute to build it. On OpenShift, I assume I would just make a building pod that would build the end Docker image, and then it would get deployed to the cloud. As far as I could tell from the question you just answered, while using Jenkins X, I would have to modify the original source code so that Jenkins X knows specifically how to build it. Is that correct? Or does Jenkins X also has a similar system where I can make another pod which builds the image?
Yeah, so Jenkins X makes a new pod that builds the image, but in repository of your application, not the Jenkins X, you need to define, I don't know, do you need Maven or do you need Go or you need something else, right? So it will not evaluate your source code and say, this is most likely Perl, right? So you need to specify a few things. But because afterwards, Jenkins does create pods just as Red Hat does, OpenShift does, and in those pods are the tools that do the job, whatever needs to be done. And by the way, the major authors of this are guys from who previously worked on what you're describing in OpenShift. Just that they decided to make it better, and then they came to us. That's the difference.
All right, thanks.
Can we do it without the mic?
Yeah, no.
No.
I'm truly sorry that I haven't read your books.
Shame on you.
Yeah, true.
Don't read the first couple of them. They're already 2 years old. That's obsolete.
So can you talk about a few differences between them and why minor version keeps coming up, not the major one?
I couldn't. So my main minor comes because I'm not creative. I just that's the first thing that came to my mind.
What's in it?
Okay, so the first one, 2.0, is DevOps in general. A lot of different tools, practices, and stuff like that, right? 2.1 is very focused on Docker Swarm. It's 100% Docker Swarm, and not 100% Docker Swarm, but Docker Swarm and things around it that you should use. 2.2 continues with Docker Swarm, but makes itself adaptive and self-healing and operates without humans. 2.3 is about Kubernetes. Everything you should know about Kubernetes without spending a year. And 2.4, which is right now going on, is continuous deployment to Kubernetes.
So
Jenkins X is part of it, for example.
So it's not an upgrade? Every book is
different stuff.
Is different. It's more like series.
Yeah, exactly.
Didn't know that. Thank you.
As I said, I'm not really into marketing. I self-publish. I don't think much about it, whatever comes. No real reason for that.
And we run out of time. Thank you.